Thanks, Chris, and thank you everyone for inviting me to speak at the Oxford University Botanic Garden 400th Anniversary Symposium. My name's Nick Wray and I'm Curator at the University of Bristol Botanic Garden, and I'm going to be talking to you a bit about our conservation work and our science engagement activities. First slide here shows a plan of the Botanic Garden, and the first thing you'll notice is how small it is. It's only 1.77 hectares, but it's very intensely planted, and it's a new Botanic Garden designed and built between 2003 and 2005, and the garden is a series of organic informal paths laid around a formal Victorian house. The large area of water provides a home for native aquatic plants, and associated with it is this area of limestone rock garden and meadowland area full in full sun, and woodland plants are here in this woodland, and this is a relic bit of ancient woodland that the Botanic Garden has been built around. The opportunity to relocate and rebuild and replan a new University Botanic Garden doesn't come along very often, and it provided us a great opportunity to look at our plant collections and what we do. The garden was founded in 1882. It's been relocated 3 times, but most recently to its new site at the Holmes in 2005. And it gave us an opportunity to look at our mission, produce a motto which you can see here, and so through these slides there'll be aspects of our mission will appear on the slides, which really sort of help cement the images about what we do to engage with our audience types and the plants that we grow. After some very careful consideration and a lot of planning and also justification of the collections, the new garden contains these 4 core collections, and you can clearly see there that down that list the third one is local flora and rare native plants. The previous gardens grew these plants as a number of small disparate collections, and we've brought all these together into one dynamic and exciting display made up of multiple different habitats that are found locally here in the Bristol area. The Bristol area is interesting in terms of plant habitats because it's got a diversity of geology, topography, and land use history, and this has provided an opportunity for different plants to evolve and establish. It's been habitated by humans for many thousands of years, so there's quite an intense land use pressure, and a lot of our rare native plants, a lot of our engagement activity focuses very locally on within the city of Bristol here on an area known as the Downs, which is here. This is an area of calcareous grassland. Lee Woods, which is an area of semi-natural deciduous woodland with a lot of ancient woodland indicator species, and the River Avon, which runs from southeast to northwest through an area of limestone gorge, which you can see in this picture, and the habitats that are being created through the weathering action over millennia of the river. Incidentally, the Botanic Garden is located here, so it's well placed to engage with partners on the conservation of plants and the management and use of the Downs, Gorge and Lee Woods habitat. This is the Avon Gorge with Lee Woods on the right hand side of the picture, and on the left hand side of the picture is the lower flanks of Clifton Downs. Now, some would argue that this is one of the top 5 ecological sites in the United Kingdom. It's got many unique species in it, some endemic, and it's had various aspects of land use. This area here, the area on the right here, has been woodland grazing for many centuries, but inaccessible cliff edges have been semi-natural woodland, whereas the area on the left here has been limestone grazing up until the 1939, when that ceased, and that gave an opportunity for the woodland trees to establish. And that's an issue for the limestone grassland plants that we're looking to conserve. Here are some of the floral highlights. We have at the bottom of the screen here Trinia glauca, a member of the Apiaceae. This plant is found locally in the Avon Gorge and also on the Carboniferous limestone Mendip Hills and limestone outcrop in South Devon near Torbay. The Avon Gorge population faces extinction through change of habitat use. The plant is a European-wide plant with just a toehold in southern Britain, and that's the same here on the left-hand side. This purple-headed Bristol onion, or Allium sphaerocephalum, this is a European species, and the Avon Gorge is the only mainland locality for this plant. At the top of the picture we have Sorbus bristoliensis and Sorbus whiteana. Now these are two endemic species that have evolved in the gorge through a complex series of hybridization, producing these sexual clone apomictic species, of which there are a number in the Avon Gorge. And conservation effort here is not only protecting individual trees, but also the habitat in which they have evolved, so that there's an opportunity for future trees to appear if conditions are right. This image shows the Clifton Suspension Bridge, designed and built by the famous Victorian engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel. And we see two aspects of environmental threat in this image to our rare and threatened native flora. And these are real issues that are being dealt with, which I'll come on to shortly. But in the foreground of the picture here, these pale pink flowers are a species of European onion called Allium roseum, the rosy garlic. And this plant is threatening the rare and threatened local flora by squeezing it out and dominating the local vegetation. There has been, over the last 200 years, quite a lot of building in this area, and of course when the suspension bridge was built, when this foundation buttress was built for this tower, there was a population of rare Scilla autumnalis, or autumn squill. And this is the plant. It was noted, and it's been recorded, that the wife, Mrs. Glennie, of one of the assistants to Brunel, warned him that the Scilla autumnalis, a really healthy colony, was going to be damaged by the building of the bridge foundations. And Brunel took this on board and ordered that the plant be moved and planted elsewhere away from the construction site. And this is the first record of someone moving an Avon Gorge plant species for plant conservation. So it took place way back in 1831. These plants have been in university care since the 1960s, and the Botanic Garden is now the home of this species. It's still found in the Avon Gorge, but it's extremely rare and is threatened by those alien plant communities squeezing it out. So I mentioned earlier that the gorge is the home to a great diversity of Sorbus species, and you can see here this is the majority of the species and hybrids that are to be found. Many of them are endemic to the United Kingdom, for example, Sorbus anglica, Sorbus porygentiformis, Sorbus eminens. But a few are actually endemic to the Avon Gorge, so they've actually evolved here, like Sorbus bristoliensis, Sorbus whiteana, wilmotiana, and hybrids like Avonensis and Houstonio. There are a few introduced species from Europe, and you can see them on the list on the right-hand side. These have seeded into the gorge from Victorian plantings, and you can see this is the area where most of the sorbus occur. And you can see all this urban sprawl, Victorian and down here Georgian urban sprawl, and the associated ornamental trees. Some of them have seeded into the gorge. We have representations of all the Avon Gorge sorbus species in the Botanic Garden, and they're well interpreted. We're not afraid of putting science on our interpretation boards. We, as a community at the Botanic Garden, we discussed long and hard about how the interpretation boards should be pitched. And our view is that you should be able to come to the University Botanic Garden and actually see and learn about some of the science behind the plants. So we're not afraid of actually putting that on our interpretation boards. All the plants are clearly labelled through a programme of relabelling, and the plants are displayed accurately, and they're near a disabled access path. So that's really important that people come to see these plants. They should be presented in a way that everybody can see and enjoy them. We have other ways of engaging with local user groups. Over the last 12 years, a group of volunteer local botanical artists have captured images of all the rare and threatened local flora and most of the sorbus, and created a wonderful series of botanical artwork which has been exhibited in the garden in various different forms, but has also gone on to other sites, including the Oxford University Botanic Garden, the RHS Garden at Rosemore, and a few other sites. And that's what we're looking to do more with this exhibition, so we can encourage other people to experience the interesting flora that's in the Bristol area. Now, the land use of the Avon Gorge and the Downs is very complicated, and you can see that on this slide where all the different owners have a different coloured boundary. And about 22 years ago, the Avon Gorge and Downs Wildlife Project was formed. The university was a founding partner, and along with the other agencies you can see listed here, we come together and meet several times a year to discuss management techniques, management policy for the Avon Gorge and Downs, improvements that we can make, perhaps scrub clearance, alien plant scrub clearance, public engagement, schools programs, budgetary issues, to give better access, to give higher quality access for the local people, but also to encourage a better management practice of the Avon Gorge. And this has led to a number of significant improvements. So this is one trial study that's been running since about 2011. I should just go back to show you. No, I can't do that. So this area is known as the Gully. It's on the eastern side of the gorge. This has been grazed by animals like sheep and goats for literally millennia, but that stopped in 1939, and the trees seeded from Lee Woods and changed this habitat into deciduous woodland. There's now a programme since 2011 to actually cull the trees and bring in the light to this area to improve the habitat for the sun-loving herb plants. And most of this work has been done by the introduction of cashmere goats. 5 goats were introduced in 2011. They browse on the hard plants like ivy, bramble, other scrub plants, and they ringbark trees. And this has had the effect of bringing the light into this area, and this is necessary for plants like the Allium sphaerocephalum, which you can see in the bottom picture here, growing and flourishing in this small habitat called the Gully, which has been fenced off to prevent the goats escaping. And these goats have had a dramatic effect on the change of habitat. Now, clearly in this area, you can actually see these trees with silver foliage. These are the white beams in the gully, and these have had to be protected individually from the browsing habits of the goats so that they continue to survive. But you can see the area beginning to open up here. So there's a perimeter fence here, so beyond it is the woodland, and here you can see some of the grass and herbrage turf area beginning to flourish. There's a very high level of monitoring in this area, and one plant, Trinia glauca, a member of the APAC, known as homewort, the populations in the gorge have now shrunk back, and they're only found on the rocky outcrops of the gully. And this is a plant, and a number of rare native plants to be found there are recorded and their numbers counted each flowering season by the volunteer botanist pictured here, Libby Houston. And she's been instrumental in feeding information to the Botanic Garden about population sizes. She works with the Avon Gorge and Downs Wildlife Project on various surveys, and she's been very good at bringing plant material into the garden with agreement of the landowners so that we can propagate it and develop our ex situ plant conservation programs. And this is one we're working on at the moment. This is Trinia glauca growing in the Botanic Garden. And we're working with the Avon Gorge and Downs Wildlife Project to increase the numbers of these plants. It grows relatively well in the nursery from fresh seed, and we have an ex situ population in the garden which we flower and collect seed from, and are growing new plants for replanting down into the gully. It's a tricky plant to keep going. It's monocarpic. It's dioecious, and is pollinated by ants. So male and female plants have to be close together to achieve a successful pollination. So it's a plant that needs constant management, and the part of the problem in the gorge is that the population size has reached a critically low density, and it's unable to survive in the long term there without assistance. Another aspect that we've got involved with is improving the downs area for wildflowers and insects by helping to advise on the management of the grass sward. You can see these yellow areas here, which are areas of calcareous grassland which are allowed to grow as meadows, and these red areas are areas which recently been proposed to expand this programme. And the Downs is a very busy part of the city. It has 500,000 visitors a year, and it's a delicate balance between user groups like sports people and recreational walking and things, as well as those who are interested in wildlife and nature. So all these things have to be accommodated on the Downs. So whilst we would like to expand these areas still further, there's a balance to be struck with the various user groups. We don't want adverse reactions for encroaching on sports areas. And so some areas we would like to expand, we're actually shrinking back to maintain the quality of what we already have. I think that's important. So over the last 20 years, these herbrage areas have been allowed to grow as meadow. They're cut in late July, August, and the arisings are baled off, and then the area is just allowed to regrow in the winter months. Since 2012, we've sought to represent this limestone meadowland and all the plants that are in it in the Botanic Garden. So we've created a calcareous meadow as part of our rare and threatened native plants displays, and you can see that here. The plants are well interpreted. There's various workshops we run to interpret this, and it's proved a very, very popular part of our collection display. Many of the plants in the Avon Gorge grow in accessible positions. The gorge is a mecca for rock climbers and recreational activities. So some of the plants we display in the garden in a very high profile area. It's the second display you see when you come into the garden, and this allows visitors to see plants that they may have heard of, local people seeing plants they may have heard of, but to see them clearly labelled and enjoy and be able to study them. And being able to redesign the garden from scratch in 2004 and 2005 has allowed us to sort of raise the profile of our rare and threatened local flora to our user groups, and that's really important. Another example of a project we get involved with, this is the brown galingale, Cypress fuscus, a summer growing annual. And this plant grows not in the gorge, but about 10 miles north at the Gordano National Nature Reserve. And we've used our skills to grow this plant, to work with Natural England to collect seed and grow plants ready for reintroduction. And cattle are an important part of the conservation of this species because the plant grows on land that's been disturbed by cattle's hooves. And here you can see one of our students checking on plants that we planted 3 months earlier to do a count on the number of fruiting heads on them and estimating the number of seeds that are going to go back in the seed bank. So this is a project we did with a finite start and finish time. And it was good to be involved with a partner with this, working on this species. Our engagement programs are varied, and we have a variety of target groups. The biology undergraduates, which you see on the top of this slide, are all introduced to the rare and threatened native plants and the work that we do there. There's a lot of passive engagement with clear signage, plant labelling, and people walking around the garden. And we also do, we've recently started peer group training. So we're taking some of our PhD students, training them in the kind of salient aspects of the biology of these rare and threatened native plants, their conservation status, and then we're using them to actually teach first year biology students as part of their first year practical. And you can see that in the top left hand side of this slide. The bottom right hand side you see students in their second year bioimaging practical, and they're monitoring pollinators visiting various plant groups in the garden, including the rare and threatened plant populations. And we have year 3 and year 4 plant science students helping interpret the garden. We have a number of festivals a year, and lectures by our academic community and our researchers are important to help highlight the biological aspects and conservation status of our local flora. And this is an interesting slide because this pollination researcher here in the middle of the picture, these are insect cases you see on the table in front. All these insects were collected as part of a pollination survey in the gully. So the plant story is also mirrored by the insect story, and this is interpreted we have an annual bee and pollination festival in September, and this is an important part where researchers, academics come and meet the public, and it's a great opportunity to share information. Once a year, the city has a citywide Festival of Nature. The university has been part of this since its inception, but some 25 years ago, and we've exhibited our rare and threatened native flora there. And we get involved with one-off projects. In 2015, Bristol was European Green Capital, and it was a wonderful opportunity to get involved with the Bristol City Council. The council's programme was to plant 36,000 trees, which they exceeded in 2015. But the legacy of this project is that the council continued to plant 6,000 trees each year for each school pupil. The Botanic Garden was involved in a specific project and raised 100 Sorbus bristoliensis trees and planted them between 2015 and 2016 in 100 Bristol primary schools, working with the council on this project. We worked with science engagement, raising the profile of these trees and their biology to primary and junior school groups across the city. And our latest project, just the final slide to talk to you about, is that the city is developing and reinvesting in its transport network. And through the triple SSA site of the Avon Gorge, a railway line that's used only for freight is to be upgraded for passenger use. This is going to result in over 100 rare and threatened native sorbus trees having to be felled on safety grounds. And we're working with local ecologists to collect seed, and then our team are processing that seed, and we're raising those young plants in the garden ready for replanting into safe positions. And we're doing this under contract with North Somerset Council. So the Botanic Garden's about engaging with local people, and this slide shows that as you walk into the garden, you can see the other side of the pool there, the meadow, the rock garden, the woodland environment. The rare and threatened native flora is on very high profile display in the garden. It's well interpreted, and we work where we can with local partners to afford conservation effort and using our skills to propagate and document plants so that they're safeguarded for the future and local people know about them. Thank you. I hope that's been of interest, and I'll stop there.